like a bit of a desperation move for the Rockets because the Rockets lost some of their core guys in the last few weeks. They lost Luke Mbah a Moute. They lost Trevor Ariza. These guys were part of their defensive identity. That's what made the Rockets a special team last year. They were a great offensive team with great offensive players, but the reason they went as deep as they did in the playoffs was because of that defensive identity. Carmelo, to me, just feels like the guy on the market, like the last guy with talent that they could potentially bring in on a short-term type of deal. So I'm fine with it. I don't think it significantly improves them. In fact, I would certainly argue that right now, even with Carmelo, the Rockets are a weaker team going into next season.
I agree they're a weaker team going into next season. I think we might look back on this Rockets run and say, you know what their window was? Right up until Chris Paul pulled his hamstring.
Yep.
That 1 year and the one season, they had home court. Yeah. Golden State was kind of in cruise control throughout the year and didn't seem to really lock in, even in Game 6 and 7 of that series where they were down double digits in both those. And I think when Chris Paul's a year older, he's now at the part of his career, he's probably getting 8 to 10% worse each year. But I don't think adding Carmelo hurts them. I actually think it is, if used properly, a good addition for them. I think everyone is over-exaggerating the loss of Mbah a Moute.
Okay, but define for me if used properly. What does that mean?
I think Carmelo Anthony, if you want to run the offense for him at the end of first and third quarters, run the offense through him, I think Carmelo Anthony as a floor spacer, because he's still one of the best catch-and-shoot three-point shooters in the league, I think those things work. Similarly to how they have used Ryan Anderson throughout the regular season the past few years. Now, does Carmelo Anthony move the needle in the postseason? I mean, he did for the Thunder last year in a hugely negative way. He was terrible in their brief playoff run. We'll see what he is by the time the Rockets get to the playoffs this year. But, I mean, the guy that the big loss for them is Ariza. And Phoenix overpaid for Ariza. He's not worth $15 million a year to the Rockets. They let him go. But Trevor Ariza also was 0 for 12 in Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals.
But you can't take away. This is what I don't like about the NBA. However a guy performs in the playoffs or like at that little final stage, like we make that the resume for the season. But the reason why that they were a better team was because of Ariza. You know, the Cameron Prince, the totality of them, the minutes that they played. The reason why they went from the bottom half of the NBA in defense was because of these guys, right?
I would actually disagree with that. I think they were important pieces, but I would say the reason they made the defensive jump were these three things more than that. The evolution of Clint Capella, the addition of P.J. Tucker, and the addition of Chris Paul. I think those were their three biggest defensive pieces.
Well, what about the 30 games that Chris Paul missed?
Sure.
So you don't, no, this is the thing. Chris Paul missed 30 games. You don't go from the bottom 6 team in defense to a top 10 team without all those other minutes. So we can't exclude that part. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And
he missed 30 games. If he had played 80 games, I would be like, yeah, Chris Paul was the reason. P.J. Tucker, yes. But it's all those pieces. Melo doesn't fit. Melo, he's just not my favorite player. So I have to be careful in trying to criticize the move. There's no way that Houston as a basketball team think they're better today than they were.
Well, what do they get out of Carmelo Anthony? How does he contribute to the team? How do they get better with him on it?
I don't know how they get better. I don't think they get demonstrably better. Look, this is... And I wrote about this last night. This is kind of a seminal moment for Carmelo Anthony. Maybe not this season, but at the end of the season, the next couple of years. You talk about used properly. The most proper way to use a 34-year-old Carmelo Anthony right now is as a sixth man. Bring him off the bench, let him cook some of those second-unit type defenders, and get him off the floor in the fourth quarter, which he will be once again. You are not going to see Carmelo Anthony on the floor in the fourth quarter of big games in Houston, just like you didn't see him on the floor in the fourth quarter in big games in Oklahoma City. You saw Jeremy Grant playing a lot of fourth-quarter minutes for the Thunder last season. If used in that way, he can be effective. But if you're talking about sticking him out there as the power forward in the fourth quarter of games with Chris Paul and with James Harden, how do you stop teams in that regard? He is still a below-average defender, and this doesn't even take into account the entirely separate conversation of the hilariousness of he and Mike D'Antoni reuniting. He was the reason that Mike D'Antoni quit New York. Not a reason, the reason that he quit New York. Those two together, it boggles my mind.
Okay, but Mike D'Antoni is signing off on this.
Yes, and Mike D'Antoni's a different coach right now.
Well, what else is available?
Well, listen, I don't think the Rockets are not in a position where they feel like if we don't add Melo, we're screwed. They are doing it because they think it's an added benefit. And when you're saying he can't be on the court in the fourth quarter, listen, Gerald Green was playing fourth quarter minutes for this team. Like, you don't think there is, unless they want to go super small and have CP3, Harden, and Gordon out there, there is a lineup that exists that's CP3, Harden, Melo, PJ Tucker, and Capella. That will be the starting lineup. That will be some games' finishing lineup. Now, if you want to go smaller and sub Eric Gordon out, but Gordon's not a great defender. We also have to recognize that how does this team match up against Golden State? Not great. How does any team match up against Golden State? Not great. There's 28 other teams in the league. They got to get back to the Western Conference Finals first. Like, you don't have to have 5+ defenders on the court at all times against any team except Golden State, right? Like,
but isn't that just the bar? Like, that's the bar. Like, you know, they're a 65-win team that went to the conference finals last year. Forget everybody else. Like, that's who you need to be building a team to compete against. And you're not going to convince me that Carmelo Anthony on this team makes them even close to as competitive against Golden State as they were last year.
Yeah, I don't think they're definitely, if they were one step away from Golden State, they're definitely several steps. You know, I believe a couple teams in the East have the potential to be as good as Houston. Like, I don't believe Houston believes that they're as good as they were or have the same potential. Like, last year, they thought their ceiling was world championship. It would be hard for me to believe that everyone in their building believes that now.
Okay, well, I mean, if they don't believe that, they're lying.
They believe. Like, in the building, like, in the building.
But maybe they're kidding themselves.
No problem.
Of course. It's just, you know, I wish... You know, Carmelo Anthony at that exit interview last year with Oklahoma City, when he kind of dismissed the idea of being a sixth man, that was frustrating to me because I think he can be an incredibly effective sixth man on a winning team, a championship team for the next 3 years.
That's what I was going to. Is this going to be a whatever it takes with Carmelo Anthony? Is he willing to do whatever it takes to convince people last year maybe was an outlier year and that, yes, he's on the decline, but it was not nearly as bad as what happened in the playoffs?
I don't see him having that attitude. It's really hard, and you could speak to this as a player, but it's really hard, I've found, from NBA players to go from being superstars to role players. For their entire professional careers or their entire lives, they've been the best players on the court when they've been out there. To transition to a reserve role, you don't see a lot of guys do it. It's what drove Allen Iverson out of the league, quite frankly.
Real quick, I think the Melo, I agree with you that ideally he would be a sixth man. The reason I'm putting him in the starting lineup is just because you're not going to start Ryan Anderson. I don't think you're going to start Gerald Green. Like, the Rockets have really good guard depth.
All their choices are bad.
Ryan Anderson might be a better fit for what they do. He's a better three-point shooter.
They both space the floor about equally.
You think Carmelo Anthony's going to be happy just kind of standing in the corner, spacing the floor?
Again,
Nick thinks this is a galvanizing moment. He thinks this is a moment of humility.
I do. I think that.
But we have no signs to be able to verify that. But he just thinks...
If you're right, then it could work better than I think.
Well, when you say we have no signs of being able to verify that, of course, because the season hasn't started yet, see? But what we do know is for some guys...
Who?
What do you mean? We've never heard of a professional athlete getting cut from a team and having that all of a sudden change their outlook?
A buyout. He's not getting cut, Nick. He's not getting cut.
Because you can't cut guys.
They told him to go home, and I'm going to give you a check.
See, you can't cut guys in the NBA. A buyout is getting cut. That when he has a moment where...
I know what getting cut is.
Right, of course.
I know what really getting cut is.
Of course. And what you went through is obviously different. That's not what I'm comparing it to. But we have seen guys... When I say it's a galvanizing moment...
Yeah, just tell me the guys that did. Make a list of the guys that you have seen. Okay, this guy got bought out of his contract, and this was a galvanizing moment for him. All right? I'm not giving credit to Melo for something that I can't identify. Who did that? You tell me a great guy made a bunch of money, and then at that moment he said, you know something? I'm getting ready to buy into this concept of being a backup because that moment right there humbled me. I don't see that, and I don't see Melo doing that.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.